You're standing on an open plain in Namibia. Nothing moves. The horizon looks empty to you. But 3 feet away, a sand tracker points at a spot 40 meters out. A single blade of grass bent the wrong direction. He says an eland walked past 6 hours ago, injured, favoring its left leg. You see nothing. He sees a story written in dust. That gap between what he sees and what you see isn't luck. It comes from decades spent training a sense most of us never fully use. For roughly 300,000 years, survival depended on eyesight sharper than almost anyone alive today can imagine. In 2013, researchers tested visual acuity among Aboriginal communities in Australia's Western Desert. The average score came back at 20/14. People there could see details at 20 feet that someone with normal vision needs 14 feet to catch. Some individuals scored closer to 20/10, doubling the resolution most people consider sharp. Part of that gap traces back to childhood. Kids raised outdoors, scanning distant horizons instead of screens, develop eyes that grow differently. Constant exposure to natural light and long-distance focus slows the eyeball change that causes nearsightedness. Myopia rates in industrialized cities now top 80% among young adults in places like Seoul and Singapore. Among traditional hunting societies, that number sits close to 0. Raw acuity only tells part of it. The San people of the Kalahari built an entire discipline around reading the ground. Louis Liebenberg, a South African researcher, spent decades documenting how trackers work. They identify individual animals from a single print, judging age, sex, speed, even mood. All from marks invisible to an untrained eye. Liebenberg argues persistence hunting, chasing prey for hours until it collapses from heat, required this kind of visual decoding to work at all. Depth perception mattered just as much. Throwing a spear accurately at a moving target 30 meters away demands split-second calculation. Distance, speed, and wind all processed visually before the arm even moves. Atlatl throwers in prehistoric Europe and the Americas could hit targets the size of a human torso past 40 meters out. That kind of accuracy needs a visual system trained through thousands of repetitions starting in childhood. Night vision carried its own weight. Without artificial light, humans depended on moonlight and starlight to move, hunt, and defend camp after dark. The Pleiades star cluster looks like a small smudge to the naked eye. It actually contains hundreds of stars. Most people today pick out 6 or 7 points of light in it. Traditional societies across Arabia, Australia, and parts of Africa use the number of visible Pleiades stars as a rough eyesight test. Skilled observers reported 9, 10, sometimes more. Then there's the Arctic. Sunlight bouncing off snow and ice for months causes photokeratitis, sunburn on the cornea, leading to temporary blindness. Inuit and other Arctic peoples solved this with snow goggles carved from bone, antler, or wood, cut with a single narrow slit across each eye. Archaeologists have recovered examples from old Bering Sea sites dating back roughly 2,000 years. The slit blocks most of the blinding glare. It also sharpens focus the same way squinting through a pinhole camera does, letting hunters spot a seal's breathing hole in ice from a distance, risking almost none of the light damage. Color discrimination played its role too. Foragers needed to tell ripe fruit from unripe, edible mushrooms from toxic look-alikes, often in dim forest light. Studies on hunter-gatherer groups in the Amazon and Congo basin show measurably faster color discrimination times compared to urban populations tested under identical lab conditions. San children grow into this ability early. From around age 4, they play games built around visual detection. Spotting hidden toys in tall grass, guessing which direction an insect moved from disturbed sand. Competing to spot approaching animals before anyone else in the group. By adulthood, this isn't a skill anymore, it's instinct. Visual skill wasn't only about spotting things. It was about remembering them precisely. Sand rock art across the Kalahari and Drakensberg Mountains shows eland, giraffe, and antelope painted with exact muscle detail. Researchers studying these sites found no evidence artists worked from a live model. They painted from memory, sometimes days after watching the animal move. That means the eye wasn't just gathering information. It was storing a full visual file for later use. Modern art students given the same test, sketch an animal from a brief glimpse, score far below trained trackers in accuracy. Underwater, the challenge flips completely. Human eyes evolved for air, and underwater everything blurs without a mask. The Moken, see nomads living along the coasts of Thailand and Myanmar, dive for shellfish without any equipment. In 2003, researcher Anna Gislin tested Moken children's underwater vision against European children of the same age. Moken children saw underwater objects roughly twice as clearly. They'd trained their eyes since toddlerhood to constrict their pupils and reshape their lenses on command. A trick most adult eyes physically can't manage without years of practice. Back on land, peripheral vision mattered as much as sharp focus. Spotting a predator often happens at the edge of your sight, not the center. Studies on the Jude Hoansey and the Kalahari measured contrast sensitivity, the ability to notice a faint shape against a similar background. Their scores outpaced urban control groups tested under identical lab conditions. That kind of vision catches a lion's outline in dry grass before it moves at all. Vision also carried social weight. Hunter-gatherer bands often held between 100 and 150 people, a figure anthropologist Robin Dunbar linked to the limits of primate social memory. Recognizing every face, reading tension in a jaw, catching a warning glance across a fire, all depended on trained visual attention to human expression. Some groups reinforced this with scarification and paint patterns, marks that identified clan, age, and status at a glance. A stranger's marks, read correctly, told you who they were before they said a word. Night brought its own visual training. Staring directly at a faint object in darkness often makes it disappear. The center of the human eye is packed with cone cells built for color and daylight, poor at catching dim light. The edges of the retina hold more rod cells, tuned for darkness. Trained night watchers learned to look slightly to the side of a faint movement instead of straight at it. A technique modern amateur astronomers still use to spot dim stars today. All of this sharpness came at a cost most people never notice until it's gone. Nearsightedness rates have climbed sharply worldwide since the 1970s. Researchers point to hours spent focusing on close objects, books, screens, phones, instead of scanning distant horizons. A 2015 study across East Asia found children who spent more time outdoors developed significantly less myopia than children who stayed indoors. Sunlight exposure itself seems to trigger the retina to release dopamine, which slows the eyeball's elongation. Screens simply never existed for the ancestors passing this system down. Their eyes trained on distance every single day, from birth to death. So could a modern person actually get some of that back? Researcher Louis Liebenberg didn't just document tracking. He tried teaching it. He developed CyberTracker, a certification system now used to test wildlife trackers, park rangers, and conservation workers across Africa. Trainees spend months relearning to read broken grass, disturbed soil, and faint prints. Most start seeing almost nothing. After roughly a year of daily practice, many can identify species, direction, and rough age of tracks reliably. The eyes themselves don't change. The attention behind them does. Special Forces tracking schools and wilderness survival programs use nearly identical methods today. Weeks of forced, deliberate observation until the brain starts flagging details it used to ignore completely. Which brings it back to that tracker in Namibia, 40 meters from a bent blade of grass. His eyes are structurally identical to yours. Same lens, same retina, same nerve carrying signals to the brain. What separates you from him is roughly 10,000 hours of forced attention, starting before he could read. Every ripple in dust, every distant shape at the tree line, every faint star trained into instinct instead of effort. That instinct once decided who ate and who didn't, who saw the leopard first and who didn't get the warning in time. Somewhere in your own eyes, the same hardware is still sitting there, unused, waiting for 10,000 hours. Nobody has time to give it anymore.